Hey songwriters, today we're diving back into a pop single that was produced entirely in GarageBand.
Put a new song in my mouth. All the nations, they will hear, they will...
And in this video, we're gonna look at how to take your stock GarageBand drums and make them big.
And he declares my victory.
So let's dive in. All right, so we're gonna look at three main areas where I'm beefing up the drums in this song, and first is here in verse 1. So here in verse 1, I have one drum layer going on, and I'm processing it in a way that really beefs up the stock sound. I have this kit here, but I'm gonna create a brand new one just to show you how I did it. So I'm gonna go to Software Instrument, create a new one, and I'm gonna go over to Drum Kit, and I use the Heavy Kit for this song. So it's pretty dry by itself. So I'll click back and forth between the two, give you a comparison, and then show you how it's done. So if I click on this one, and then back to the dry track. So pretty big difference. And here's what we do. If I click on this track, and you can hit B on your typing keyboard, that brings up or minimizes what's called the Smart Controls window, where you can do a lot of the processing. And so if you'll look here on room, I have taken the size of the room up. It just makes the drums sound like they're in a bigger room than they really are. It makes them sound bigger and broader. So here in the stock one, you can see that the room is very small, so we're gonna take that up to about 3/4. I'm also gonna bring up the compression to about 3 o'clock as well. So now, some of the biggest impact that you can make on a set of drums is adding reverb or some space, some depth to them. So if you'll notice here, if I go down to my plugins menu, click on it, you can see that I've added what's called the Space D reverb, the Space Designer reverb. So if I go down to our dry track, I click here on an open space. I'm gonna click on reverbs and go down to Space Designer. And now you'll already be able to hear the difference. But it's still not quite as big and thumping as our original. So what I'm gonna do is also add some reverb from the master reverb. So if I click down here on this track, bring it up to about halfway, let's see how that sounds. So when I go back and forth between the two, you can still tell that the original is a lot bigger, has a lot more depth than the new track, and that is because of the settings on the reverb itself. So if you look here in the original, my dry output has been turned down to negative 5.6 dB. So if I do that in this track, you'll see it's -3. That means the clean signal is still punching through pretty loud. So we're gonna bring that down to that 5.6 number, and then again, you'll see that the reverb output, I've boosted it up to -15 dBs, whereas here it is -25. And what that means is you're gonna hear more reverb coming through. So I'm gonna go down to heavy, go up to 15, and now we should be about on par. All right, so let's try that out. There we go, now it's sounding really big, like you're in a nice large room. And here's a little quick tip. If that was a little overwhelming for you, let's make it simple, and you can go into your default settings and actually pick out a large space, a medium space, a small space. Let's say it's a large space and we want a large room and we want big drums room. Let's try that out now. Really, a lot of those are gonna work. It just depends on the context of your song. So let's move on to the second part here in this song. All right, so now we're in verse 2 of this song. I'm gonna hit play on it and show you a technique on how to layer drums. So let's hit play.
Death strong waves crashed on me.
So really all I'm doing here is I'm applying the same processing techniques that I just showed you, but now I'm layering the drums, kind of like we talked about layering pianos in the last one. So if I just play one of those drums by itself, it's really not that big and grand. Let's listen. But if I layer it in with a couple of other kits, it sounds like. And then you bring that into context with your whole mix, and it really creates some nice warmth and roundness to your drum sound.
Death strong waves crashed on me.
All right, so let's move on to the final spot, number 3 in this song. So now we're in the bridge of this song, and here we've expanded again, and I want to show you not only how to process it and then layer it, but also how to layer in some samples to get some punch out of your kick and snare and to create a really big sound when you put them all together. So I'm gonna hit play on it and then we'll dissect it.
He declares my victory.
So you get an idea of how big and how round the drums can sound. And here's what I'm doing. Again, I've taken regular drum kits and processed them in a way that makes them sound much bigger than they really are. But then I've also obviously layered them in together. I'll play just those. So that's just the stock drums. And then I took samples from a friend of a kick as well as a snare, and this kick and snare is really pretty plain by itself, but it adds a percussive bite to it. So really not spectacular by itself, it just helps kind of grab your attention. So when I put all those together, so I know some of you are going, but I don't have these samples that you have. Where did you get those? You got them from a friend. Well, you can create sounds like this by creating a brand new track, do a software instrument, go over to your electronic drum kits and pick something like the Boutique 808, and you'll get a sound that really is not far off of what I just showed you. And it's not about it being big or crazy, it's just creating a little bit of punch on the low end and on the crack of the snare. So let's bring that all into context and hit play on it.
He declares my victory. And chains are broken at my feet.
So there you have it, guys. 3 ways to process your stock GarageBand drums to make them sound big and warm and massive. Feel free to leave questions and comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.
A new song from my mouth. I lift a new song from my mouth.
So really all I'm doing is I'm applying the same technique that I just showed you. Try that again.